Alright, so what we're going to talk about today is how to put the inside bracing on the inside of your ukulele. What we've already done on this one is we've cut the sound hole, which we already showed, and we did our inside rosette. Once all of this is sanded, it's very hard to see your center line down the center of your ukulele, and so we want to get this marked before we start sanding. It's really important that all the seams for the glue line up perfectly in your instrument. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this down, set my frame of my ukulele down on my front piece, and I have to really check multiple times, front, back, top, all the way to make sure that everything is really perfectly aligned. Okay. Once I find that it's perfectly aligned everywhere, then I want to hold this down and I want to trace the outside of the instrument with a very sharp pencil, and then I want to trace the inside as well. If you need to, you can use a partner. You have to do this after you have your ribs put in place on the inside of your instrument. Okay. Just like that. Once this is done, I'm going to also mark my seam right here and up top right here. If it's easier for you, you can make a mark here and here and draw a whole center line, because some woods it's very hard to see the glue seam on. This wood is a little bit easier to see my glue seam, but if you have a sapele or a mahogany, it's very difficult, so sometimes it's nice to drop a seam all the way down first. On the piece that's becoming the front, you want to mark the inside and the outside. The piece that becomes the back, it's only important that you need to mark the outside, but you can mark the inside if you want. It's important to also flip this over to mark on the opposite side, because sometimes your instrument might not be perfectly symmetrical. So it's good to mark the side that will become the back on the piece that will become the back, and then the edge that will be the front on the piece that will become the front. So again, I'm lining up perfectly on my glue seams. I'm holding it down, the piece that becomes the back. Needs to have the whole outside done. Once this is done, I can begin to sand the front side up to a 220 grit sandpaper. Alright, so we've sanded this down all the way to about 220. What we're going to do now is we're going to flip it back over. Right now we're going to put some reinforcements on there. So when the strings of the ukulele are put onto the bridge, what happens is the strings pull very tightly against the wood, and so it can cause it to bend and deform. And so what we need to do on the front face of the ukulele is we need to put some reinforcements for stiffness. So there's a whole box of different shapes that some of them have cuts in them like this, so they can go over one another to create a bridge. Some of them are thinner, some are much wider. So depending on where your sound hole is on your ukulele, you'll have to create a custom bracing across it. The more bracing you use, the stronger it will be, but also the more bracing that you use, the heavier and less resonant the face of your ukulele will become. So for this one, I've got my sound hole off to the side, so I'm going to do a rather simple one that's going to just go straight down the center this way. Most of our pull is going to be going this way with the strings, so we don't have to create a lot of bracing that goes across this way. And so ours for this design is going to go this way. So to put on our sound bracing, what we're going to do is I'm going to take glue and I'm going to put it down the rim of this, and we're going to do similar to what we did for our edge bracing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create the V, I'm going to drag it so that I can have a consistent glue line with no dried patches. If you have dried patches and you do not do a good job gluing down your reinforcements, what's going to happen is your instrument is going to have a vibrating sound. Every time you pluck a string, it is going to go zzz, zzz, zzz on the inside. And so it's really critical that you do a very good job gluing this down all the way to the edges. So once I have one down here, I'm going to take my tape and I'm going to stretch it on. So same thing, I hold it down on one side, stretch the tape, pull it across, and make sure that I do a very good job squeezing out all the glue and having a firm and flat connection. Sometimes you might have to double up tape. Sometimes you can't get all of your bracing done at the same time. This one right here will interfere with that tape. So I'm going to have to put that one on later once this glue has dried. It's important to do one at a time and not rush this process. It's okay if it takes 2 gluing sessions. It looks like this one here won't fit either, so I'm going to have to take my time to do this. Here's another ukulele face with a more traditional located sound hole, and what I've had to do here is I've cut off the ends of this brace because I need it to fit within my 2 ribs, and if it was the full length it would interfere with the ribs, making it so that I can't have a good glue connection and put my rim around the body, or put my rim around the face. And so now I'm going to glue these on too.